The story begins with a man named Frank who is enjoying his drink while observing the surrounding scenery. He is a special police officer who specializes in handling crime and murder. With his partner, a detective named Duggs, today Frankie has a mission, namely to catch a builder who is involved in a crime. They intend to catch him at the port where he works. It can be seen that both of them are experts in this profession. While walking casually, Doug even confides about his son's education bill, which is up to $3,000. Doggs casually called the criminal, Jimmy, who was on his lunch break from work. Doggs called his name and told him to surrender properly. However, Jimmy instead took the gun from his pocket and took the friend next to him hostage. Frank, who was not afraid of the hostage-taking's bluff, prioritized the mission rather than the hostage. Because of this, Jimmy ran away. The chase begins. Frank overcomes obstacles and hurdles to get the fugitive Jimmy. With his intelligence, Frank let Jimmy shoot and count the number of bullets in his magazine. When he ran out of bullets, Frank chased with all his might, but instead he hit the car very hard, causing his forehead to tear and his ears to bleed, which was truly tragic. The story returns to Frank's life as usual, but this time he has a problem with his ears, which causes him to have to use a hearing aid. In the office, there was a lot of noise and loud noises that hurt Frank's ears, who was using a hearing aid. That day, Frank was called by his daughter, who had learned to use sign language so that her father would understand. Frank quickly adapted to learning to use sign language. Frank was invited to attend his daughter's guitar playing event, but he couldn't because his earpiece was very sensitive and painful for him. The doctor said that 11 months from the initial incident until now his ears only function 30%, previously 50%. This made Frank a little disappointed. The doctor reminded him again that frequent exposure to loud noises could cause Frank's ears to be worse than before. With hearing aids, Frank can control how sensitively he can hear, but the weakness of this device is that it uses a battery, which if not charged, the device will die completely. With Frank's profession as a crime detective, he was asked to ask eyewitnesses, but this is where the problem arose, where Frank couldn't hear because there were so many voices from photographers and helicopters, which made Frank angry and left the eyewitness. At the bar, he felt sad because his lack of hearing was interfering with his current job. Frank felt he was useless and decided to leave the police force. Dogs, who are partners in his work, understand what he feels. Dogs offers him a job that will make him feel useful again in the police force. The murder witness who saw the incident in this case was someone who was unable to speak or was mute. Frank was asked to be the translator using sign language. At first, Frank didn't want to accept it because he felt this was really embarrassing, but with a little coaxing from the dogs, Frank finally gave in. Dogs also explained the details of the mission they would carry out. Ava Fremount, age 33 years, he was in the alley with and saw the attack. Ava reported the incident this morning, but it happened on Wednesday night. Frank started his job as a translator, introducing himself as a police officer and asking what he knew, but Frank, who had just learned sign language, was still not fluent in sign language. Ava was angry and asked for an official interpreter. But finally they were allowed to enter. Frank starts by asking why the apartment building is quiet. Ava replies that everyone has been kicked out. The last one to move in was her. After asking questions for a long time, Ava started to provide a video recording, with the reason that Ava, who was filming the beauty of the full moon, accidentally recorded the murder incident. Ava's cell phone was taken for further investigation. Feeling that he had done his job, Frank went to the toilet and sent a message to his child, but his cell phone ran out of battery, which made his hearing a little disturbed. And Frank accidentally found a high dose of illegal drugs without a doctor's advice. So it turned out that Ava was actually not filming the full moon, but she was going to do a drug deal. On the way home, his hearing equipment felt problematic. When he wanted to fix it, he realized that he had left his cell phone in Ava's toilet. Frank rushed back to get it. At that moment, the gang came who would come to Ava as the only witness. They intended to eliminate this witness. Because he felt suspicious, Frank, who was a clever police officer, didn't go straight into Ava's room, but instead he turned around and passed the room next to him. Frank saw Avenue, who was being interrogated. With a frightened face, Ava could only surrender. Feeling that the only sanction was in Frank's language, he took action. Managed to shoot one of Frank's gangsters, and Ava ran away using the stairs next to her window. They entered the alley and hid from the pursuing gangsters who wanted to kill Ava. The leader of this gangster was named Mays. He called a criminal doctor because it was impossible for these criminals to go to the hospital. These gangsters also monitor so that Ave and Frank don't come out and reveal everything they have seen. Ava also asked why the criminals knew her identity. Frank immediately explained that it was like there were people in the search for this case who wanted the witness to disappear. The conversation between the mute and the deaf continues. I don't know what they were talking about, but the point is that feelings began to grow between the two of them protecting each other so they could get out of the building guarded by these damn criminals. Now the prank hearing device battery is completely dead. Frank only relies on Ava's words now. Call for help via the intercom on life to send help to this building. Frank is not an ordinary policeman. He is always aware of what the enemy is thinking, so Frank destroys so that he is not watched. They, with empty weapons, decided to go back to Ava's room to get Frank's cell phone, but it wasn't there. Frank took the cell phone of one of the gangsters and hit him so that he became unconscious. They hid in the next room. At the same time, the leader of the gangsters came and asked where the witness was, but he didn't know. Frank managed to call his friend Doug's and tell him everything that happened. Frank tells him to bring help to surround the building. While waiting for help to arrive, Frank told him why the gangsters had attacked him. Without realizing it, the gangsters were already at his door. Fortunately, they were able to escape and hide in another room. This is where we know why they were able to find out his location. Apparently, the criminals tracked the cell phone that Frank took from one of their members, but Frank managed to trick the stupid criminals. In the room where they were hiding, Frank found that his partner Doug's had arrived. At first, he was confused as to why he only came alone and didn't bring reinforcements or other special units. Frank was going to jump in the elevator to go down the room and meet Doug's, but he was shocked by the appearance of a corrupt police officer who pointed a gun at his face. Frank told Ava to jump first. When Frank was about to go down, he saw the corrupt policeman still moving and intending to take a weapon. Frank suddenly jumped up and beat him like John Cena. Below, he saw Doug's, who was being held hostage and was actually becoming a burden, but who would have thought that Doug's was actually a gang of the corrupt police. Upset because he felt betrayed, Doug's said that he needed money for his child. Frank was threatened by the gangster leader to join, or he would be shot dead on the spot. Doug's instead invited Frank to join too and ensure his safety. It was in the elevator that Frank, the honest, intelligent policeman, took advantage of the elevator, which closed very quickly. He went to Ava's room and saw that she was already weak. Frank took an overdose of medicine to reduce the poison. Realizing he had no other way, he cleverly took petrol and intended to attract the attention of people and the fire brigade. However, the gangster leader still insisted on killing Frank and Ava, so he was trapped and succeeded in being doused with acid by Frank and Ava. Doug's chased them. Luckily, they managed to enter one of the rooms and thought of a plan. The plan was successful, and unfortunately, Doug's was shot by the gangster leader who couldn't see because his eyes were doused with acid. Ava fainted because the poison had contracted again, which is why Frank left her. However, Frank managed to take him out of the building and give him to the medics, and yep, that's the ending. He was now listening to his daughter's performance. Even though Frank couldn't hear him, he was also happy to see the reactions of the people around him. And... Hi, I'm going to introduce you to a nice shirt. Since winter is coming soon, let's buy this shirt. The material is good, cool, and cheap. The link is in the description.